All right. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. This is our Q2 Chicago Tug. As you may have heard from the banter here a little bit, we're starting to spread out more and more. We got people coming in who aren't even from Chicago. We got people from all across the US kind of joining us now too. So fun to see people coming in from all over. Kevin, I didn't actually ask from the slide deck. Did you take this photo?
I did not. This one's poached. I do have one kind of like this, but it was an Arlington Heights building, and I didn't think anyone would recognize the downtown Arlington Heights area.
Gotcha. Yeah, I always love these tulips that we would get from downtown, by the way, too. So, but yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Really excited about today's agenda. Kevin, if you want to give me the next slide.
Yeah.
So just a couple of notes here quick before we jump into today's agenda. So our upcoming next Chai Tug, because we scheduled these things in advance and have found that helps us with staying on schedule. Our Q3 one is going to be on August 24th. We've got Sam lined up. And for those of you who don't know who Sam is, hop on Twitter, go look him up. Sam's got some great content out there. He's been a longtime contributor to Tableau. I think if you're kind of on the in crowd with like all the people that are really active on Tableau Twitter or on Tableau like LinkedIn, Sam's name creeps up all the time. So he's got some really, really cool content floating out there. I'm really excited to hear from him. We keep getting more and more cool people coming in to talk to us about cool stuff. So don't miss Sam. You'll absolutely love hearing from him. Q4 is going to be November 3rd. We don't have anything lined up for that yet because we're not thinking that far out, but just so that's on everyone's radars, you can actually put those in your calendar because we have those dates reserved. All of our tugs are from 5 to 6:30 p.m. That's Central time. I have to remind myself that constantly because I'm now on Eastern time in Ann Arbor. So translate that as needed for yourself if you're out on the West Coast or East Coast or whatever. So we are looking for places to meet. One of the things that we are hoping that we can do in 2022, I know the current rise in COVID is maybe kind of sort of going to delay this, but we are looking for physical places to meet. That includes both for actual tugs, although we're finding that these virtual tugs are being very successful. We are not quite reaching the same crowds that we were necessarily getting pre-pandemic, but that said, we're reaching more people and more places, which I somehow kind of think is actually more valuable. So anyways, we're looking for physical places maybe to do smaller meetings in between happy hours, social times, networking sessions, whatever. So if you work for a company in Chicago, but particularly if it's in the Loop, although it doesn't have to be, and you know that you've got a space, hit us up. Or even if you want to just be, I don't know, involved in planning a social outing at some other location or place, and you feel like you have those expertise, let us know and we'd be happy to get you involved. Speaking of getting involved, we do need one more co-leader. So right now we've got myself. I come from a company called CCC Intelligent Solutions, where I've been working as an analyst where I worked as a BI developer for a couple of years, now moved over into the UI UX side of things. We've got Kevin and Ashley over in Discover. Kevin's got this management background. Ashley's kind of covering our bases when it comes to Tableau Server. We'll hear from Ashley today, in fact. And then we're looking for one other person who wants to be a co-lead with the group, preferably outside of Discover, so we get some more coverage with other companies across the Chicagoland area. So if anyone on this call is interested, you can reach out to one of us and let us know that you're interested in being a leader. If you think being a leader sounds like a lot of responsibility, but you just want to be involved in being helpful or kind of around what we do, we could also talk to you about, hey, volunteer options. Volunteer is a strong word, but if we need help with random things, whether that be like social media or, like I said, places to connect or visit or social outings or whatever, you can go ahead and let us know. Lastly, so Kevin has an open role. This is a shameless plug from Kevin. And maybe Kevin, I can let you just explain your shameless plug.
Yeah. I was able to create the slides, so I can sneak my own bullets in there. Our BI team, it's a SQL Snowflake shop with Tableau on top. And actually, as you're watching, like Ashley and Sarah talk about how awesome our server platform is, so like you're kind of building content in a beautiful space like that. we're expanding into credit management for student loans at Discover. So it was a group that was trying to do it themselves, saw the good quality work that we do in terms of designing tools for them. And they gave us a head count. So it's a wide open box, and I'm in the process of looking for who's that next person. So not a first role fresh out of school, but probably like, 1 or 2 years, you already have a little something in your Tableau public profile as a portfolio. And has got some SQL experience with some larger data sets. Hit me up on LinkedIn.
Super. And in fact, it's a good reminder. I might have a couple of juniors I might be able to send your way, Kevin. So I'll double check on
Sounds
that.
good. The last one you sent me, I talked to them tomorrow. So thank you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. I'm excited for you to get to talk to him. So that's awesome. Yeah, if you've got anything that you want to just reach out to Kevin, then obviously. So can you give me the next slide there, Kevin?
It's going. There it is.
Awesome. Thank you. Clearly, we're in the welcome. So we've got 3 speakers today, 2 of whom are either current leaders or leaders emeritus, as we've dubbed MP. So first, MP is going to talk to us about raw data and insights. The opening slide I've already kind of cheated and saw. MP has this knack and love for all things data, and it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's a large enough data set, he's interested in it. So he's going to give us a sneak peek into his approach to data sets and how he processes, understands, and visualizes information in data. He's been doing this a long time, so this is going to be a real treat. Next, we're going to get Ashley and Sarah. So Ashley and Sarah are fresh back from the Tableau conference, where they presented some of their content about monitoring and keeping your Tableau server healthy. Really, really cool content. I know that it's been in hot demand. We did a survey a while back of everyone within ChaiTug about subjects that they wanted to hear more about, and server was very high on the list. So you're going to get a kind of front row seat view of, I think, like the latest and greatest in terms of server content and stuff like that. And obviously it was good enough that they spoke at Tableau conference. So you get a private showing, so to speak. And then lastly, really excited about Robert's presentation with Tableau and Figma. I've been connected with Robert on Twitter for a few months now, maybe a year. We ping each other back and forth on various things, but been really impressed with Robert's work over the last year that I've been following him. We were talking before the call kind of started here about just use of Figma. It's a product that I'm using more and more regularly, and I'm pumping into the BI team that I used to be a part of full-time for switching roles. Figma is becoming less and less a nice to have when it comes to Tableau, and more a need to have or soon to need to have. So I think this is going to be a good introduction for those that are new to Figma as to how you can use it to really enhance your Tableau dashboards and take them from bland to fantastic, and also take your organization's design skills from basic to more advanced. We'll wrap up at that point with Robert's presentation and move to a virtual networking session. I will have dropped by then, and I think Ashley needs to drop as well. So Kevin will see us out on that end of stuff. And people tend to stick around for that. I think that we've actually seen a lot of people stick around to just like, talk shop or work on something, or a couple of times like people have like actual like Tableau questions. So good chance to maybe answer some questions if you got any too. With all of that, MP, do you want to take over?
Sure. Just rearrange screens here. Let's see if I screen 1. Here we go. Oops. Yep. So with the chat out. All right, so as Tom mentioned, I've been using Tableau for a lot of years, and I've been playing around with data for a lot of years. And I used to be an Excel guru, and I hardly use Excel anymore. For me, it's all Tableau all the time. And years ago, I just came up with this expression: "Any sufficiently large, non-random data set is inherently interesting." I mean, every once in a while, a juicy data set comes by my way, and I think, yeah, this is how I'm going to spend my weekend. And this talk is it's really for 2 types of people, I think. I love Tableau, but dashboards get all the attention. Dashboard this, dashboard that. Iron Biz is around creating these wonderful dashboards, which is all great, but in my business, we don't build dashboards like that. We just analyze data. We just get down and dirty into the data because we're a consulting firm. So I get new data sets all the time. Now, I imagine a lot of folks, especially say Kevin at Discover, you've got your data and it doesn't change. Like you've got, if you work for a company, you're building dashboards for a corporate data set that doesn't change. But I'm ingesting data all the time from new clients. So I come up with a lot of techniques just to learn how to interpret data. What does this mean? What's significant? What's interesting? What's not interesting? What can I overlook? So I think this will be aimed for folks who get new data, like if you're in a consulting role, if you get new data all the time, or if you're just interested in becoming more public in Tableau, using Tableau Public, to participate in these makeover Mondays or the various contests they have. So you get new data in and you just want to get up and running as fast as you can. So I'm here to help you find the story, how to get up to speed quickly with new data set. So you may have heard of the Chicago Data Portal. I've heard it dismissed as not being that interesting, but of course I find any data interesting. There's actually, originally I was looking at FOIA requests of all things. And FOIA requests are actually way more interesting than I thought. I'm a big bicyclist. I like to commute my bike to and from the loop. So I saw a data set on traffic and furthermore, traffic crashes. So I thought, what the heck, we're going to play around with traffic crashes. So there are 3, I think, relevant data sets on traffic crashes, just the crashes themselves, people, and one called vehicles. I've combined crashes and people, and also we're going to be looking at the neighborhood boundaries, because as you know, Chicago is a city of neighborhoods. So the first thing I do when I get a new data set, and I'm not going to go through how I joined it so already. We're just talking about where do we go from here once we have the data. So first thing I like to do is just create some stats. Now the stats here aren't that interesting. So my stats are basically, what's the count? How many records do we have? And typically I verify this with whoever my data source is. Next, I like to look at a unique ID. So in here, there is something called a crash record ID. So we see that we've got, what's 1,365,000 observations, but only 1,364,000 crash record IDs. So this suggests to me that crash record ID is not really unique. There are at least a few duplicates here. Now, for my purposes, I don't really care if there's, what is that, about 8,000 duplicates out of 1.3 million. So I'm just going to ignore it. But otherwise, I might dedupe the data set or create some calculated fields around that. I'm also bringing the neighborhoods. I think there's supposed to be like 80 neighborhoods or so. We've actually got 98. I'm not quite sure why there's 98 primary neighborhoods and 78 secondary neighborhoods. That doesn't make sense to me, but neighborhoods are not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in crash data. So at this point, I'm going to say, all right, we're good to go. I'm just going to move ahead looking at using this crash record ID or the record count more or less interchangeably. Next thing I like to do is look at the date range. So whenever I get data, typically there's a date field. Oh, incidentally, the very first thing I do is something like this. I make my own data dictionary. So this is just something I copy and pasted off the Chicago Data Portal. This is one of the few things I use Excel for now. So I make a little data dictionary. I've sorted this by, I think it's by crashes. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what sort order this is, but what I've done is created this data set. I've identified duplicates, so we could. So there's this crash date, crash record ID is in all 3 sets: the crashes, the people, the vehicles. So I know that I can use this to join the fields. I consider that a key field. I've gone through here and identified some other things that I thought would be of interest based on my own personal interest, i.e. bicycling. So in constructing my analysis, I go back and forth to this data dictionary a lot just to say, like, what does alignment mean, for example. But enough of Excel, we're going to go back to Tableau. So I know that there's a date field. So the first thing I do is just take a look at my date range. So cool, the date range is 2013 to 2022. But of course, the first few years is virtually no data at all. And then we see that 2016, we start getting a few thousand records, and then it really takes off in 2017. So to my mind, this tells me a lot already that maybe I don't want to look at 2017 and earlier data because they're apparently still ramping up in their data collection efforts. And then of course we had the start of COVID in April 2020. So this is a pattern I see all the time in my data. Like whenever there's a big dip here, I know, oh, that's April 2020. I'm also amused that we've got Batman hiding over here in the wings. This is my date range. Just keep in the back of your mind though, that probably we don't want to use all years with the data. We probably just want to start with 2018. But let's double check that. Let's look at seasonality. That's something else I often do. So you'll see that 2017 here, sure enough, is ramping up. 2016 kind of ramping up too. Looks like 2020, 2021, these are relatively consistent, I guess, across months. So more and more, I feel like 2018 and forward is what I want to use. Oh, also, I like to make the most current year in black, so it stands out a little bit more. But I don't know if anyone's noticed, I'm adding captions over here. I found a use for captions, so I make notes to myself. Next, let's look at by age. I mean, I'm just curious. You know, crashes by age. This is by age and sex. So I guess no real surprises here that most crashes are young men in their mid-20s. I'm an old fart, so that doesn't surprise me at all. What I'm curious about, though, is that there's a lot of age 0 here. My guess is that these, I'd like to think, these are not crashes involving infants. I think what 0 means is they just didn't collect the age data, that instead of someone leaving it null, they actually entered a 0. That's my guess. If I were more interested, that might be worth running down, but frankly, I don't care. But what this does tells me that there's a few thousand, not a huge number, but there's a few thousand, few hundred below driving age. So my guess is that this crash data is not just automobiles, it's pedestrians, bicyclists, etc. So we'll keep that in the back of our mind. Next, I just like to look at, whoops, I didn't want to show you this. Next, I like to look at sample distributions. So basically, I'm just going to go through here and just make this table, which is the count of observations and the percentage. So I think I mentioned there's alignment. So this appears to be points of the compass. What I find interesting is, typically I would sort this in descending order, that over a third of the accidents are westbound and another third are southbound. So south and westbound accidents account for like almost 3/4 of all crashes. By the way, I've been calling them accidents sometimes. I'm pleased to see that the Chicago data portal or Chicago Police Department, whoever collects this data, refers to them as crashes. They're not accidents, they're crashes. So I'm just kind of surprised that 36% are westbound. And at this point, I might start coming up with a hypothesis. It's like, oh, this is probably happening late in the day when people are commuting home and the sun's in their eyes. Or maybe people are just tired and it's the end of the day, they're commuting home westbound and they're more likely to have an accident because they're tired. So that's a couple of hypotheses that might be worth testing. Or westbound accidents happening because of sunshine delays, or is it throughout the year? Again, I'm not particularly interested in that hypothesis because I'm a bicyclist, but someone else might be. So I would just go through here basically one by one and pick out things that look interesting to me, like say crash type. Say, all right, 70% did not have an injury, they just drove away, and another 30% did have injuries. So that's crash type. There's damage. So we can see that most crashes involve more than $1,500 worth of damage. There's a variable in here called dooring. Dooring is when a cyclist runs into a door that someone has just opened. So this is actually something I might be interested in. Of course, most crashes don't involve a dooring, which doesn't surprise me. There's something here called first crash type, which makes me wonder what's the second crash type, but I don't think that's a possibility. I think we just have first crash type, but we have second contributory cause. But our first crash type. So this is just something standard I do. Now I know Tableau is a visual program. I'm used to Excel, so I tend to think in terms of tables. We could, of course, turn this into a bar chart, which might be meaningful. But for me, I just like to look at this quick list of variables and values and what the percentage distribution is. Some of these, by the way, are not interesting. Even I don't think they're interesting, like lane count. Whoops. We've got lane count here. So I'm just intrigued that apparently there's a road with 22 lanes. I mean, maybe. Moving on. Oh, so there's one in here that I thought was interesting. It's called report type. So if we look at report type, we'll see that it's about 50-50. But here's the thing. So if I look at, so now I'm making a bar chart, and I'm just curious as a distribution by year, because I was looking for why would 2017 and earlier years be so much lower than 2018? So it looks to me like in the beginning, most reports were not on the scene. No cops showed up. They were just desk reports. Someone phoned it in, I guess, or submitted an online report. And then beginning in, say, 2018 and later is when they had cops showing up on the scene. I don't know what that means. It could mean that the cops were always on the scene. They just weren't uploading their reports for some reason. Or maybe Lori Lightfoot decided to require cops to show up for traffic crashes. I don't know. That might be worth investigating too. I did not mention, but of the Chicago data portal, there were several ways to download this data, including text files and several types of spatial objects. So since we have a spatial object here, I thought we have to create a map. So I made a map. There is a variable in here called geometry. So I just double-click geometry and it added the lat long, and I got this. So I can see there's a bunch of points over here, and there's a point way over here. So apparently this is lat long 0. This is just routine stuff I do all the time. Like we're doing QA, quality assurance, on our data. So something else I might want to make a note of is lat long is not always dependable. So we've got two things to keep track of. We've got the year and we've got lat long. So I decided I'm just going to create a calculated field called exclude. And I'm going to trap lat long values. So if longitude is null, or if longitude is less than -80, I'm just going to say that's an invalid lat long. Otherwise, if crash date is less than 2018, I'm going to say prior to 2018. Otherwise, I'm going to include it. So this allows me to create a new filter and decide which I want to include. So basically, these I think are clean, and these I think have a problem. Either the lat long is invalid or the year is invalid. Now, there may be times when I want to include these, like I may want to include lat long because I'm not mapping it, but I don't want to include year. So creating this filter, this calculated field, allows me to filter and keep whichever values I think are problematic or not. So now let's redraw our map using our new filter. This will take about a minute to generate. We've got something like 476,000 points that we're mapping. So doing a lot of mapping here. I've chosen to use the density map. So the density versus points. I think this is faster. I'm not sure. But Tableau is doing a fair amount of work right now. We have got 476,000 marks that we're mapping. So, and I changed the color too. I liked using this sort of thermographic color because you can see there's really the intensity of crashes here in the loop in the downtown area. Also notice it's a little bit, there's a fair number over here in the far western suburbs, which I find odd. And if you're not familiar with the streets background, this is a data set that's just crying out for streets. So underneath map, we can go with streets. So clearly, streets is the way to go if you're looking at crashes. And when we start zooming in, we'll see a couple of things happen. I can start seeing that there's a lot more accidents at intersections, which again, not a surprise. And you can start seeing that, you know, where they are actually occurring in the loop. We'll see things like, say here, I'm assuming this is Michigan Avenue. Looks like there's a lot of accidents going on Michigan Avenue. So just some things to keep in the back of my mind as I start developing some additional areas that I'd like to explore. In fact, one thing I want to look at was, we all know that Chicago is a city of neighborhoods, but how does this relate to neighborhoods? I mean, I can see where the crashes are, but let's overlay this with the neighborhood map. So I had downloaded this neighborhood map, also conveniently at the Chicago data portal, combined the two, and now we can see, oh, this makes, to me, this makes a little bit more sense. I mean, I can make more sense of this. So here's our neighborhood map. I've used the highlight feature. This is something I know it's been around in Tableau for years. I just discovered it in the past year or so. So now I can see, for example, where is Lincoln Park? I can just type in Lincoln Park here and see that. There we go. Lincoln Park. Or, I don't know, Andersonville. Andersonville looks like a pretty safe place to be. So next, I'm thinking, all right, so this is all very interesting from a spatial point of view, but I like to see tables of numbers. Like I mentioned, I used to use Excel a lot. So I'm really sort of oriented towards spreadsheets. So let's turn this into a table. So now I'm just mapping the primary neighborhood. There's a variable here called shape area. So I grab that and I can't make sense of it. We'll come back to that in a moment. Here's a count. So I'm thinking, all right, if I were just to look at this map, I might say that, actually, I don't even have to look at the map. I can just go here. If I just sorted this by the number of crashes in the neighborhood, I'd see that Austin has a lot of crashes. If you're not familiar with where Austin is, doesn't look like a lot of crashes to me. It looks like there's a lot of crashes over here. So I'm thinking Austin's also, I mean, we see there's this light area suggesting there are a lot of crashes, but I'm not convinced that there's that many crashes going on in Austin. And part of the reason is because Austin is a large area geographically. If I were to look at crashes per square mile, say, it would probably rank further down the list. But here's my problem. I've got this shape area, which is just a bizarrely large number. And as it turns out, we can convert that to square miles by dividing by, what is that, 27 million? Which is 5,280 squared, 5,280 feet in square miles. So 5,280 squared gives you 27.8 million. So we just divide this number by 28 million. And now I can come out with square miles. Now we see that Austin is a fairly large area. It's not the largest. That would be O'Hare, where there are very few crashes.
Hopefully there's not a lot of crashes at O'Hare with bikes.
Very rarely, yeah. But we can see that Osborne's gone from being the number one in terms of number of crashes to pretty far down the list in terms of crash density. In fact, the mag mile has the greatest crash density. That's what I'm calling it, crashes per square mile. That's because, it basically, the mag mile is just Michigan Avenue for a stretch. It's 4,000 accidents there over a time period. I think I have, I've edited out prior to 2018 and edited out the invalid logs. In fact, the mag mile is over five times as many crashes per square mile as the number two. So keep that in mind. Number two is only 5,000 crashes per square mile. So now I'm wondering, what if we redraw our map and look at it by crash density? And now we see that Austin's not number one. It's clearly what's going on down here in the loop, and Edgewater of all places. So I'm not sure there's much of a story here, but still working through the data. I will mention that a few years ago, I was talking to a guy from Tableau at one of the Tableau conferences. He was a recruiter, and he passed on to me that whenever he talked to someone, was hiring someone, the first thing he will do is open up a Tableau workbook and add a new sheet, like a new worksheet, and makes a note of the number. And it has to be at least, I forgot the number he used, it has to be at least 20 or at least 30, because he figures if it's anything less than that, people aren't really exploring the data enough. So I'm a big believer in creating a lot of tabs. And there's way more than 20 tabs. I don't know why there's, so my next tab was 20, but so far so good. I feel pretty good about the data. I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on it. But like I mentioned, I'm a bicyclist, so I have a story that I want to look at, bicycle crashes. In particular, we saw this variable called Doring, so now I'm going to filter on just Doring. And I'm just, kind of curious. I'm going to make a calendar here. So when is Doring worse? The most Doring accidents were apparently in 2018. I don't know what that means. And in the summer months, not a surprise there. Happy to see that the number of Dorings is going down, or at least the number of reported Dorings is going down. So maybe that means that they're less serious. This might be a reflection of the number of bike lanes. So one hypothesis might be to also get some data on the number of bike lanes built, or PBLs, protected bike lanes, and see if there's any correlation between a decrease in the number of Dorings and the number of bike lanes. Incidentally, I kind of like doing these heat map type of things. So I also did one by hour of the day and day of the week. It looks like Thursday afternoons, or basically afternoon commute hours are really bad for Dorings. So again, this kind of reaffirms my feeling that people aren't paying as much attention late in the day. So maybe we see more accidents across the board late in the day. Also, it's just something I like to point out. Tableau by default puts Sunday as the first day of the week, which I hate. Saturday and Sunday is the weekend. So I like to see Saturday and Sunday at the end of the week. So you can change that by going into date properties. Here we go. Date properties, and says the week starts Monday. So you can change it on the data set. So you don't have to resort this. You can just say start the week on a Monday. So this wasn't that interesting, but it did make me wonder, where are Dorings happening? I know they happen in the afternoon, but where are they happening? If any of you are cyclists, this map doesn't surprise you at all. So we've got, what is it, Damon or Damon, north-south here. I've ridden on most of these. In fact, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So instead of just showing all Dorings, we'll look at the top 10. So these are the top 10 streets. I've created a filter here, top 10 streets for Doring. So we've got Milwaukee, Belmont, excuse me, we've got Lincoln Avenue over here, Belmont, east-west, Armitage, east-west. I think anyone who bikes on Belmont has got to be suicidal, but that's just me. Clark, that's my route. So a lot of doings going on in Clark. Halstead kind of surprised me, but beware of Halstead. Incidentally, in creating this map, I had to add dooring to context. So I will just show you my filter. I will edit my filter and say that we're looking at, oops, excuse me. This is the filter I wanted to show you. So I wanted to look at the top 10 streets based on number of crashes. And I had to add dooring to my context, because if I didn't add it to the context, I'm going to remove from context, we have a completely different set of streets. And the reason is because I want to apply how do I want to say this? I want to apply the dooring filter to that top 10. In the order of operations in Tableau, top 10 overrides everything unless you add to context. So if you have any filters in here and you're using a top 10, you want to use that add to context feature. All right, so moving on. I just like to check my data. I get nervous. I mean, I've been using Tableau for a long time, but I know it's easy to, Tableau makes things so easy. It also makes things easy to make a mistake. So I'd like to double check my data here. I've just put in the street name, I've added rank, and this is the number of doorings. So now I can see that my top 10 really are the same top 10 showed on my street map. So I'm feeling pretty good about this now. Moving on, I was just curious about when I was exploring the data earlier, there is a variable called first crash type, and there was a value in it for pedal cyclist. I'm not sure against motorcyclist. I don't know. I've never heard it called a pedal cyclist before, but just kind of curious. So for cyclists who get into a crash, looks like most of them, 48%, have no incapacitating injury. Another 31% said there's no indication of injury. 11% said I had an injury, but it wasn't evident to the reporting officer. Only 10% said they actually had an incapacitating injury that could be confirmed. So I'm thinking maybe biking is not as dangerous as everyone thinks. I've been biking 20 years in Chicago, and I've had one accident, and that was actually in the suburbs. So take that for what it's worth. Speaking of that, though, I would also often say that Divvy has been in operation for 9 years, I believe. I think they started in 2013. There have been literally tens of millions of rides on Divvy bikes, and one death. I think maybe it's been 2 deaths now. And I mean, there may be accidents on Divvy bikes, but I don't see rashes of news stories about, cyclist injured. So I'm feeling like, and those guys are crazy. I mean, they ride without helmets. So I'm feeling like if all those Divvy riders aren't filling up the pages with accidents or fatal crashes or whatever, then maybe biking in the city is not so bad. So now I've made my bike crash map. So I've taken our first map that we made, and now I am limiting it to just crash types involving pedal cyclists. So now I can see where the dangerous places to bike are. And I think this is Milwaukee over here. Looks like Wicker Park is particularly bad. Don't bike in Wicker Park much, but at the times I've been there, I can see there's some intersections over here that look pretty problematic. Also in the Loop, not a big surprise, in River North. This is near my office. So I guess those are places to be cautious of, and also especially at the end of the day. And I think I just wanted to compare auto crashes with our bike crashes. So this, Tableau has something they say analytics at the speed of thought, which is one of the reasons I love using Tableau, because it's just so easy to come up with a hypothesis and test it. So here I'm testing the hypothesis of are bike accidents different from auto accidents, and we can see them side by side. So really easy to produce these maps and test some hypotheses and create some stories. Hopefully this has been useful for y'all. I have shared this on Tableau Public. So if you want to search for my name on Tableau Public, Mark Pauly, I've got a bunch of vizzes up there. None are pretty dashboards. They're all just interesting data sets that I found and played around with. So. I'll hang around
Thank you,
in case there are any
MP.
questions later.
Yeah, I was going to just say that if anyone has questions for MP, that social hour that we have at the end, you can check in with him and catch up. Thanks, MP, for sharing that, by the way. He's been a longtime soldier and advocate for the for the ChaiTug for the last almost 10 years. When did you start with us here, MP?
Yeah, it's been
at least 15.
Like 2014, 2015.
Oof, our fearless leader. So, yeah. But yes, and I loved that entire presentation because it just represents so much of what I've done through the years of my time as an analyst and BI developer. It's how I approach every data set that I've ever encountered. That's I would say a masterclass in how one goes about making sense of a data set quickly and effectively.
Thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. I want to be respectful of everybody else here too. So I think we're going to speed off to the next one. Thanks a lot, MP, again. I think Ashley and Sarah, y'all are up next.
Yes, I will share. All right. So it should be in presentation mode. Let me know if it's not.
Yes, we can see the full slide.
Great. All right, Sarah, you want to kick us off?
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Boniface. I'm the product owner for our BI tools, which includes Tableau.
And I'm Ashley Dierkes, and I'm also on our BI tools team, and I am a senior software engineer.
And we both work at Discover Financial Services in Chicago. And we wanted to share with you today our Tableau conference presentation. As Tom mentioned at the top, this was also presented at Tableau conference, but we wanted to share it here as well to further connect with our financial services community, the COE community, and just the Chicago Tableau community as a whole. But we'll share our good problems to have and how our Center of Enablement supported a rapidly growing user base. But before we jump in, we have our lovely legal disclaimer that the opinions expressed in this presentation are ours in our individual capacities and not necessarily those of Discover. So this evening, you will join us on our journey of scaling Discover's COE, and we'll start in the past, which is the land before COE. We'll show what we did to get to present day and our current COE team, and then we'll end in the future, the COE multiverse. We'll go through our lessons learned and our keys to success, and we hope that you can see yourself and relate somewhere along our journey, whether it be our past, present, or our future.
All right, so to start off, as Sarah mentioned, we're going to take you back to the past. So, you know, it's the end of a long day. It's Thursday, it's almost Friday. So I'm going to give you some facts to help put you back to the year 2016. So at this time, Love Yourself by Justin Bieber is at the top of the charts, a great tune even today. The Summer Olympics is held in Rio. The Chicago Cubs win the World Series for the first time in 108 years. Very exciting fact for this user group. And my favorite fact of 2016, it is the dawn of Tableau at Discover Financial Services. So at Discover, we brought Tableau in 2013, but 2016 is the year that the tool really started to gain some traction internally. At the beginning of 2016, we only had one server admin, one environment, and 10 users. And our Tableau tool belt consisted of Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. And like Sarah mentioned, we like to call this the land before COE. Through 2016, as our usage and content was starting to grow, we were experiencing server performance and reliability issues. So we had scheduled tasks that were being greatly delayed. Sometimes the server would even crash. So we knew that we had to better support this platform and grow it in an intentional way. And to do that, we set 3 key initiatives to work towards. We said strengthening our platform, establishing governance guidelines, and fostering a community of excitement. So these 3 key initiatives are great, but before we can start working on them, we really have to build out a solid team and establish an ownership motto. So at the beginning of our growth journey, we had Al. And while Al is an extremely talented individual, this is just way too much work for just one person. So we built out our Center of Enablement team consisting of 2 system administrators, 3 solution engineers, and 4 offshore support members, along with a director, manager, and a product owner setting our path forward. We also established our ownership motto, that is, as a Tableau COE, we own the platform and not the individual content. Now, we felt that this was important to share because as a platform team, we're not subject matter experts in regards to the individual reports that are out there. It's important that this responsibility stays with the content owners because they're the ones who know who should and shouldn't be accessing the reports, what the data behind the reports mean, and how different calculations were created. Our job is to support these content owners in the best way we can, create a reliable platform, and promote best practices. And just one disclaimer, when I'm saying content owners, basically whoever either first created the workbook, published data source, or prep flow, or the person who is the owner of it now. So to start by diving into our first initiative of strengthening our platform. So as we kind of said earlier, Sarah and I are part of our Center of Enablement team, but we know that some of you may not have the option to change specific things about your Tableau platform at your company. And because of that, we're not going to spend too much time here, but there are a few things that we felt that it was important that we highlight about our platform. So the first one is that we are Tableau server customers, not Tableau Online, which has recently been renamed to Tableau Cloud. So this means we have our own internal servers and server admins. So one of the first changes we made to our platform was increasing the number of cores that we have. So we did this to make sure that our platform could keep up with our rapidly growing community. Being able to increase our resources quickly resolved a lot of performance issues, resulting in scheduled tasks running on time and improved dashboard rendering. A second big change we made to our environment was an operating systems migration from Windows to Linux. And we really just did this to better align with Discover's internal infrastructure. And then lastly, we set up multiple Tableau environments to align with our internal data environments. So whether a person is connecting to Tableau data that is stored on-prem or in the cloud, or if they're connecting to data in a development, staging, or production environment, we have a matching Tableau environment for them to publish to, and this makes sure that we're following data handling best practices.
So as our content started to rapidly grow, we found that there wasn't much guidance around what bad practices to not be doing or communication around what good practices to be doing. So we decided to establish governance guidelines that promote best practices. Our keys to success here were to establish guidelines for our server so we could keep performance high and downtime low. our users' content, because even though they own their own content, we can still help govern the content overall and suggest best practices for managing content. And then also our users' data so that we can stay in compliance with financial services best practices around retention, access, and classification. One of the governance guidelines that we set was for unclaimed content. Unclaimed content is content that has an owner who's no longer at Discover. After a user leaves the company, their content remains on the server since it's often still needed and used. However, it does also still need an owner, so we established a reassignment tree. We run a script about quarterly that identifies any unclaimed content, and if we find a workbook, data source, or prep flow that does not have an owner, we then reassign it to the project leader. We'll also reach out to the project leader and let them know that the content's being reassigned to them. That way they're aware of the change and they can continue to manage the content from there. Now, if the project leader's also no longer at the company, we then contact the site admins for direction on how to reassign the content and go from there. This reassignment tree helps us make sure that everything on our server is being kept track of and that it has an owner, but we still allow our content owners to control the cleanup of their content, and then we can avoid removing any content that's potentially still needed, which could happen if we decided instead to remove unclaimed content instead of reassigning it. Another of our governance guidelines is for stale content. Stale content is content that has not been touched in 180 days. The process that we decided here is that a script is run to identify stale content and then automatically move it into an archive project. From there, we use our Tableau metadata to find out who the owner is and then notify them that their piece of content, let's say it's a dashboard, that dashboard has been moved into the archive project. Then they can move it out of the archive project back to where they were working if the dashboard is still needed. Otherwise, anything left in the archive project after 14 days is removed. So this process applies to pretty much all the content that we have on our servers. But again, since we're in financial services, there are some sites that are exempt so that we can make sure that we're always following any regulations around retention. And also cleaning up stale content in this manner helps keep our environment clean. And this process allows us to govern, again, without removing any content that's still needed, instead allowing our content owners to control whether or not they still need the piece of content. And then lastly, we established guidelines around data connections. We use firewall settings to block any connections from unapproved sources, and this keeps our environment secure. It also gives us some more control over what connections are being made, which helps us govern, and also we can review specific use cases for any new data connections. And this way we're making sure that we're always following proper data classification standards for all connections, whether they are new or existing.
So next we're going to move into community, and community is always my favorite topic to talk about because it really is a powerful thing when you have an excited and educated group of people behind a tool. I mean, look at us all here at this user group meeting. You know, we're here because we care about the tool and we want to learn. Like, this is an exciting thing. So 3 keys to success we've identified in terms of community are communication, education, and collaboration. So one way we've been able to foster excitement at Discover was through our internal Tableau Day. So this event was basically a mini Tableau conference that we put on for all of our Discover employees. We had over 500 attendees at this event from all 12 of our business units. In addition to having remote attendees, we were able to rent out and completely fill the largest conference room at Discover's headquarters, which was awesome. We had presentations from internal leadership, including an executive panel, as well as presentations from external partners like Tableau and Interworks, who were able to give great presentations on some new features that were coming out, as well as the art of storytelling with data. We had breakout sessions throughout the day so users so attendees could customize their schedules based on their skill level and their interests. And this event was great because not only was our team able to kind of share some changes with the platform, some new features that we're looking at bringing in, but we were also able to learn so much about our community, about their use cases, how they can be better supported, really just trying to grow the platform the best way we can. Tableau user groups. Wow, what a fitting topic for this meeting. So as you all know, user group meetings are a great way to kind of share and collaborate with other people. So we host user group meetings internally at Discover on a quarterly basis, and we typically have around 200 attendees at these events. So while the agenda will change from quarter to quarter, we always try to talk about platform updates and educational topics. So whether we want to demo a new feature or add clarification to an area of confusion. And then lastly, we're trying to highlight user success stories. So this is important to make sure information isn't staying siloed within different business units and different teams. So this is something that we always try to do. After we have a user group meeting or a larger event like a Tableau day, we try to send out a survey to get feedback to make sure our next event is always better than our last. So this is a quote that we got on one of our recent user group meetings, and it says, "Internal success stories are nice because it can provide opportunities for collaboration." So that's a pretty basic statement, but being able to hear that as a COE team, as somebody who puts on events like these, that's huge, because the whole point of this is to kind of bring people together and share ideas. So being able to hear feedback like this at a post-event survey was huge. And then lastly, I mentioned communication as one of the 3 keys to success. So different types of updates require different forms of communication. So at Discover, we have a Yammer page with all of our Tableau developers and consumers on it. So this is a great place to share updates around different community events, scheduled downtimes, expected server upgrades, and it's also a great platform for Tableau developers to ask and answer each other's questions. As a platform team, we know that our best resource is our user community. So giving them a platform like Yammer where they can communicate with each other is huge. We also have an internal support site, which is a great place to go for all questions related to Tableau at Discover. So here we have all of our past community events recorded and posted. We have links to suggested training videos. We have a user manual and a section for frequently asked questions. If a team has a question and they can't find the answer here, or they need direct support from our team, we ask them to open up a Tableau Center of Enablement or TCE ticket. So these tickets are nice because they allow us to answer questions in the order they come in, evenly distribute the work across our team, and keep track of common issues. If we see an issue come up multiple times, we'll create a support document for it and put it on our frequently asked questions section of our support site. After we do that, if the question is still coming up, we'll cover in a hot topics session at our next user group meeting. Just last year, we were able to complete 725 of these TCE tickets from 364 unique requesters.
So now all of that growth brings us to the year 2022. Ashley did such a great job of setting the scene for 2016. So here's some facts to bring your mindset back to this year. Ghost by Justin Bieber is at the top of the charts. His songs just keep getting better and better. The Winter Olympics is held in Beijing. The LA Rams win the Super Bowl. But most importantly, Discover Financial Services presents at Tableau Conference and the Chicago Tub Q2 meeting. From 2016, we have gone from just 1 to now 9 server admins, from 1 environment to 4, and now we also have servers both on-premise and on cloud, and we've gone from 10 to over 10,000 users. Our tool belt has also grown over the years, and we've added Tableau Prep, Prep Conductor, and data management. We like to call this point of our journey the Ladies of BI, which is a nickname that our team got in a Discover blog post that highlighted how our team has typically been majority women. So now from this point on, in order to continue to grow intentionally, we need to optimize our platform, enforce the governance guidelines that we've set, and really understand the needs of our community. Our user growth has slowed over the years, which we expected to happen as our platform matured. But as I just mentioned, our tool belt is still growing, and it now includes Prep, Conductor, and data management. And throughout all of our past growth and looking towards the future, we will maintain our motto that as the Tableau COE team, we own the platform and our users own their content. So in our future, there are many, many opportunities for growth in all three of the COE pillars that we've talked about today: platform, governance, and community. And so as our platform continues to grow, here are some of the ideas that we have. We're looking to leverage more of our Tableau catalog metadata. We have access to Tableau catalog through data management, and the data in here can help us better govern and gain insights into our platform. And while we're already using a lot of our metadata for things like analyzing the number of workbooks or the number of prep flow owners, we can also use our Tableau catalog metadata to learn more about data lineage and what data sources are being used and how. We're also working on a cloud migration, and here we do mean going to Tableau servers in our private Discover cloud. Again, not with the renaming of Tableau Online to Tableau Cloud. These are Tableau servers, or we're still a Tableau server customer. And though we have already started this migration, we're continuing to make progress on it. And again, we have our data sources and our environments in sync with the environments by purpose that Ashley mentioned earlier. Our on-prem data uses on-prem Tableau and cloud data on cloud Tableau. Knowing more about our data lineage using the Tableau catalog can also maybe help us here with planning and tracking our migration. And some of our platform maintenance is already automated, but we want to continue to automate any routine maintenance where we can, so we can free up our time for other tasks while still making sure that all the routine maintenance is being completed on schedule. For governance, we want to make sure that we focus on data democratization so that our users feel empowered to create visualizations and find insights in their data. And again, following our motto that our users own their content, we really do want them to feel empowered to be managing their content as well. And similar to the routine maintenance, we're continuing to automate our cleanup policies that we mentioned earlier. So things like the unclaimed content reassignment and the stale content cleanup are currently scripts, but they're being run manually. And so there's an opportunity there to automate those scripts so we can make sure that we remain on schedule. And again, this furthers our initiative of having a strong, clean environment without devoting a lot of our time to these manual cleanup tasks. And again, we're a financial services company, so we take data classification very seriously. And it's really important to us to make sure that everything is kept secure. So as data classification policies change, our Tableau governance policies will change as well to align with them. And then lastly, for our community, we do want to increase Tableau Prep usage. We've had Prep at Discover for just over a year, and though it has seen some growth in the past year, there are still some opportunities that we would like to harness the power of Prep for certain use cases. We're also planning more training, particularly for our site admins. That way we can better help them manage their sites. And if we communicate well with our site admins, they will then be able to turn around and implement best practices on their sites and keep everything running smoothly overall. And we also would like to encourage community-sourced training so that our Tableau community at Discover, which is full of so many super smart Tableau developers, and BI engineers. And we want them to be able to share their knowledge, their tips, and their tricks with others at the company or in the community at large. And then we can highlight as a COE team those trainings through Yammer, our internal quarterly user groups, or any of the communication channels that we mentioned earlier. So these are all some of the ideas that we have on our radar that we want to look into or are currently looking into, and some of the ways that we can continue to support our user base through platform, governance, and community.
So now we're going to give you a little glimpse into the future. The year is 2028. We ran the numbers and, I mean, you guessed it, Justin Bieber is still at the top of the charts. That kid is just unstoppable. The Summer Olympics is held in Los Angeles, very exciting. The Chicago Cubs win the World Series for the 4th year in a row. Now, I am a Cardinals fan, so this is a hard pill for me to swallow, but the data doesn't lie.
Well, I'm a Cubs fan, and so I would love to see this.
And last but definitely not least, Tableau at Discover Financial Services evolves based on our community's needs. So looking into the future, we don't know how many server admins we'll need, how many environments we'll have, or how many users we'll be supporting. But one thing we do know is that we're going to continue to evolve and support our community in the best way we can. And that is why we like to call the future the COE multiverse. So looking back on our growth journey, we have focused on our platform, set and followed governance guidelines, and listened to and engaged our user community. Through this journey, we learned how important platform governance and community are to creating a healthy environment. And if any one of these three are lacking, your user experience is going to be negatively affected. Along with these three key initiatives, we've built out our Center of Enablement team, grew our Tableau tool belt, and stuck to our ownership motto. Sarah and I would like to give a quick shout out to our team for all the hard work that they do each and every day to support our community and platform in the best way we can. I don't know if we have time for questions or not, but if not, feel free to post any questions in the chat or connect with us on LinkedIn and ask us directly. We'd love to answer anything you guys have or just keep the conversation going. So thank you so much.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll do the same thing like MP. Yeah, if you want to come to the networking, right? Bring your questions. Yeah, you'll miss Ashley as she wants the Cardinals to beat the Cubs, right? Kind of break up that 2028 prediction of the Cubs World Series. But yeah, hit it up in the chat for sure. But yeah, thank you very much. And I'm one of the beneficiaries of these guys running an amazing COE, right? Both the infrastructure and the communities around it. A few people, Kevin, we even text like, we have a Tableau day. I'm like, oh yeah, we should probably bug them about it. When's the next Tableau day? Because it's actually pretty good. So, but yeah, let's move along to our third speaker tonight. For those of you who were here in the very beginning, right? Tom even made a comment of like, it seems like Figma was not a word 9 months ago, and now it's a word that's everywhere. So yeah, a number of us are really starting to adopt it. I'll introduce Robert. Robert, definitely cutting edge, right? You're seeing him on Twitter being a huge go-to in this space. So yeah, huge appreciation for coming and sharing, introduction to Figma and kind of thoughts of how it's growing and how it can be useful for folks like us. So welcome.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. So let's talk Figma, one of my favorite things to talk about. So if you're not familiar with me, my name is Robert Janczak, and I'm a user interface designer at JP Morgan Chase, and I'm in the Tableau Center of Excellence. I focus on design. I'm a user interface and user experience designer. I design all of our websites. I design our Tableau applications that we have built to help our 150,000 plus Tableau users. And I was previously an analyst for years, right? Like I was developing Tableau work all the time. You may be familiar with some of my Tableau public work. I've kind of moved away from that, completely gone design over the past couple of years. But I still think that, my knowledge of Tableau and my design skills can kind of come together to help the community. I want this presentation really no slides, like those are my only 2 slides. I kind of just want to talk about the 5 tangible ways in which you can use Tableau and Figma together. And this is not going to be me just explaining what Figma is the entire time, but I do want to quickly go to the Figma site. So if you're not familiar, it's a web-based collaborative design and prototyping tool that's really, taken the entire industry by storm, right? It's been around for, I don't know, probably longer than that, 8 years maybe, but over the last 2 years, I would say most large companies have moved from things like Sketch and Adobe XD to Figma, right? Figma has a huge, expansive community, and they're really well known for their design system functionality, which is really big for large companies. And if you want more in-depth knowledge about like what Figma is, feel free to just go to Google and look up what is Figma, and it'll give you like a high-level overview, and that's kind of not what this is. But I can scroll down a little bit. You can explore ideas together, and the idea is that you can work on a canvas together collaboratively, and you can bring the ideas to life, et cetera, create an idea, iterate, repeat, test and get buy-in, powerful design systems like I was talking about. So all of JP Morgan has moved to Figma, right? So you can just imagine on your phone right now, the applications that you're using. So think about like Instagram, I don't know, like whatever application you're using, it was designed in a prototyping tool first before you start using it, right? So they design in a prototyping tool like Figma or Sketch or Adobe XD, and then you hand it off to the engineers, and the engineers actually start coding that, right? So I'm talking about websites and applications, but the exact same concept can apply to Tableau dashboards as well, right? You have Tableau developers, so it only makes sense that you can do some of these things in Figma as well. So I'm actually going to jump over to Figma, and then we can just get right into it. And this is also not going to be a super in-depth how to use Figma, because that would take forever. So I just want to be very clear about this is using Tableau and Figma together. So one of the main things that Figma and Tableau are going together is great for is prototyping, right? So prototyping is the idea of you designing what something, whether that's a Tableau dashboard, a website, or an application, designing that first before you start working in the end result, right? So for us, it's Tableau. For an engineer, that could be Vue or React or CSS or all these different things, right? So this example, I'm going to use the Tableau UI kit. And the Tableau UI kit is something that I created. And just for context, it is a paid product. It is not affiliated with my job, my company. It's completely a side project. Just want to make that clear. So for this example, I'm going to create a dashboard and design it first before perhaps it went to a developer, a Tableau developer. So just imagine someone comes to you and they say, hey, we want to get these insights and we want to build this dashboard. It's really great to actually prototype what it looks like first. So what we can do here, if you have the Tableau UI kit, obviously you can do it without it. It's just going to be way slower. It's not really going to look like Tableau at all. And just for context, the kit took me like 8 months to create, building it consistently. So I can go to assets in the top left. So I can type in dashboard. I can drag the dashboard in. And just like that, you get a great looking dashboard. And this is just the layout, right? It's not the actual, everything, the design that you're looking for. But you can see that it has the main things, right? There's a title, there's a filter section, and there's a footer. And you have the ability, and Figma is great for this, where you have the ability to customize these designs based off of, the kit that I've created. So if you see on the right here, you have switches for a title. You can get rid of a footer. You can say you want it on the right. You can say you want it top. You can say none. But for this example, we're just going to keep it left. And from here, maybe you're saying, all right, well, maybe this is a profit dashboard. If I spell profit right. Profit. We're not going to go into the subtitle. And the great thing with all of these, the UI kit is that all of the actual Tableau user interfaces look exactly the same, right? You can even go into a specific dropdown and say, oh, I want a dropdown. This could be region, north, south, west, right? And so this is giving a good indication about what the dashboard is going to look like, and it's helping your users understand what the design is going to look like before it actually gets into their hands. And so from here, I could, start swapping these out, right? It says swap. So I could hold Control and Shift and hit these two, and it's saying replace me in this far right. So replace me. What do I want to replace it with? I want a bar chart. Let's say, for example, I can take bar chart, swap that in, get rid of the title. And it's not just exactly what you get, right? You can customize it even more, right? So you can get down into the actual bar chart, and then you can say, oh, do I want a title? Do I want dimension? Do I want measure? Let's say for this example, I want dimension. And obviously you can go in here and start filling out whatever you want, right? You can customize it to, whatever you need to design for your specific example. So let's fill out these other two, right? So this could be line chart. We'll get rid of the title. And this last one could be, we'll do the infamous pie chart. Pie chart and version 1.5, I just introduced the ability to swap out different subcategories of a chart, right? So a subcategory of a pie chart is a donut chart. So you can switch it to a donut chart. You could switch a bar chart to a stacked, which, go back one. If I go to, there we go. Yeah, so I can switch out a default bar to a stacked bar, right? So a stacked bar is really just a subcategory of a bar chart, right? So I can go default, and I can say stacked. And so you can see what's going on here, right? It's categories of charts. You can customize it, and then you can switch them out for different subcategories of charts. And it really gives you a ton of customization for your prototyping needs. So that's a quick example of what you could do with prototyping, and that's using the UI kit, right? And I mentioned that you could do this by hand, but it's just going to save you potentially a ton of time. And if you're not super well versed in Figma, I use Figma 95% of my day. So if you're not familiar with Figma, it could be a great option for you. So let's go to another way in which you can use Figma for Tableau. So dashboard assets. Now, when I'm talking about dashboard assets, I'm talking about buttons and tabs. Let's say, for example, you have a dashboard and you want to navigate to a different dashboard, and you need like a button or something like that where you use the navigation container. And normally I would say most people would probably maybe do this in PowerPoint. I would say they probably don't have Illustrator. They would probably just use PowerPoint. But Figma is a really advanced design tool, so you have the ability to customize everything really quickly and have it be exactly what you want. So for this example, let me just create a frame. So I just hit F, and I'm just using keyboard shortcuts. So for this example, I'm just going to create a quick button. So I have this frame. We can call it button. We can make it rounded edges of 4. We can make it a primary color of, and what I'm doing right now, this is using styles. So Figma, I think I have over 1,500 different styles that you can choose from. So you can just choose primary button. Let's make this actually a lot smaller. So I think like 48. That seems good. Great. So now this needs some text. So we could put text. I just use a hotkey of T. So this could be button. I could put it in the frame and I can center it vertically and horizontally. Now I need to change this to white, and I could just type in white. Now the problem is, let's say, for example, you have a large team and you have a lot of different assets that you need to manage. The issue with PowerPoint is it's not dynamic at all, right? It doesn't take into account web design at all, right? Figma is built for the web. Basically, what that means is you can set constraints, you can set padding, and that's exactly what you can do when you're building a website. So normally, if you wanted to change, someone in your team is creating a button for a profit, let's say, for example, and they wanted to type in profit, like exactly what PowerPoint would do, right? It doesn't change like dynamically at all. You would just type it in, and then you would have to, move it around, make sure it's right. But this is kind of where the power of Figma comes in, where auto layout comes in, right? So let me go back to button. Now watch what happens if I turn this button, this frame, into an auto layout. You'll see, you won't see exactly what it does right away, but if I start typing things, you can see that it fits exactly to whatever padding you have. So for this example, I have padding of 15 on the left and right, and I have padding of 7 on the top and bottom, as you can see here. So I want to change all of these to 8. Actually, go back to this. 8 and 8. So now every button you create is going to match exactly 8 pixels of padding around it. So that's just a quick example of creating a button. And obviously from here, you would export as a PNG or a JPEG or whatever you use and import that into Tableau as your button. And obviously you could have hundreds of different buttons, all with their own styles. And that could be kind of your data visualization design system of sorts. And that's kind of what the UI kit helps with. So now from here, I want to create a tab. Let's say, for example, I need a tab when you select it, and then I need a tab after you select it. So let's create another piece of text and just call this tab. And from here, I need just a quick frame that's saying 1 pixel high, and I want it to be primary color. I want to use the same primary color, so 6. And now from here, if you were doing this in PowerPoint, you have to adjust it every single time. But Figma, you can use auto layout again. And basically what's going to happen, I'm going to show you. Let's say, for example, you'll notice that if I just type stuff, it doesn't do anything. But that's because I'm not telling the frame inside of this frame what to do. I'm not setting the constraint. Right now it's set to fixed. I'm saying fill the container with this frame. So fill container. So now what happens when I type stuff, it automatically matches the size of that container. And this is exactly the same thing for web design, right? So if you're using Flex, you can use fill container and things like that, HUD contents. So we'll keep this as tab. Actually, we'll probably change this to like a lighter gray, so I don't need it yelling at me. Like a 7. That's good. And what's the padding between it? Like a 4. Cool. Now I know exactly the amount of space between these two things. And from here, I need a tab when a dashboard's not selected. So I can just go into this and I can just hide it. And you'll notice the good thing is we want both of these. Sorry, if I go back, actually, we want to just get rid of the fill. The good thing is both of these are the exact same height. So, when you're putting like 5 or 6 tabs into your dashboard and they're different, you want them to be the same height so that they actually match up perfectly. Alignment is great. So those are 2 quick examples. So buttons and tabs, and obviously you can think of any other assets that you're going to use in your specific example. So dashboard backgrounds. This is probably one people are most familiar with, I would say. Like people probably use this in the Tableau community the most. Tableau does not have the ability, let's say, for example, to have rounded corners. It does not have the ability to show you shadows, things like that. But Figma does, right? So people will often create backgrounds in Figma, export as a PNG, and then they will put it into their dashboard so that you have some of these different options. And I'm going to kind of show you how someone would go about that. So for this example, we'll just take a frame. The actual size doesn't matter for now. And I'm going to show you how I would do it in the most efficient way possible. So I I would just quickly pull 3 frames. I would take 2 of these frames, make it auto layout, make it next to each other, and then I would auto layout these again. And so you'll notice that if I wanted to make this 1366 by 768, you'll notice if I make the entire frame larger, nothing's happening, right? I haven't set any of the constraints. So what I need to do is I need to make fill container, make this container, fill container. You'll notice that these still aren't matching, right? But we're just saying what the parent container should do. So let's go into these, fill container. And so the great thing about Figma is you are able to, adjust spacing in all scenarios. So for this example, I want 8 pixels of padding around the entire dashboard. So I want 8, and I want 8. And actually, I can probably finally make this 1366. And these are just, Tableau. I think this is the generic desktop frame size, I believe. We could probably make it actually bigger. So let's make it 16, actually. 16 pixels of padding on the left and right, and then 16 on the top and bottom. And then how much padding do I want between the top section? And I like to call things leading and trailing, right? So leading would come first, and this would be the trailing content. So leading and trailing. So I want 16 pixels of padding between those two, and I want 16 pixels between those two. So you see here, now there's always 16 everything. It's consistent. And the good thing about setting constraints and auto layout is now I can make this any size and it matches and it automatically is dynamic, right? So the problem I see sometimes is we have to make things dynamic, because if you don't make it dynamic on the front end, you're just wasting your time potentially in the future. So we could just call this, dashboard background, something like that. And, I want that good effect. So there's effects built into Tableau UI kit. So I can just do medium. And this is a nice, it's a nice shadow, right? So shadows, you want a combination of 2 shadows, and all of these have a combination of both, right? So from here, you would export it. I already have a version of that, so I'll just go to Tableau. So you export that as a PNG. You would go to Tableau. You would take your image, and you would choose your image as dashboard background. And it's not going to look right away because Tableau defaults the amount of padding. So make that 0 and make tiled 0 as well. And just like that, you get some of those things that you're looking for. And just for reference, if you're using floating, then all is fine in the world. But if you use containers, you cannot do this functionality with containers. So from here, you would take, I don't actually have a chart on this, but you would take floating. You would take your sheet and you would just go over like this, and you would just set it up like that. Kind of annoying. That's why most people use this background stuff only if they use floating, or it's just for Tableau Public. So let's jump to the next ways in which you can use Figma for Tableau. So icons. Now, I would say most people, if they want to get into icons, they're probably using Illustrator, but Illustrator is really expensive. I know, because I paid for it for like a couple years. It's like 24 bucks a month. And honestly, Figma can do 80 to 85% of the things, the main things that you're going to do for icons. And so this is just an example of an icon, but you'll notice that when I don't know if everyone knows what a SVG is, scalable vector graphic, which means it's using math to draw things. So you have the ability to double click and you can see the points, right? So I can take this, I can move it in all directions and automatically change it. So Figma has the ability to work with vector graphics. And so let's say for this specific example, you find an icon you want for your Tableau dashboard. You can bring it into Figma and you can mess around with the SVG points. Let's say, I don't know why you would want this, but you can move it up a little bit, you can move it down, or you can even make your own. So let's quickly make our own icon that we would want to use for our Tableau dashboard. So we could create another frame, and you'll see most icon packs. It's either 20 by 20 or 24 by 24. Just make sure it's one of those two, really. So for this example, we can call this check mark, just the check. And we can take the pen tool. So the pen tool is something you would use a lot in Illustrator. Basically, let's just make a check. So let's go here, and we'll go here, and then here. That looks good. But I also want rounded corners. So I can say rounded. And then from here, I'm just going to take it. That's not what I wanted. Take it, move it into our frame, center it, get rid of the background. And then you have a check mark ready to use. We can probably make this 2. And then we could center it again. Just like that, you get a nice looking check mark that you can use if you, for example, don't feel comfortable, I don't know, finding some icons, or you're not sure if the icon that you're using is, free to use or something like that. You can just make your own, depending on the difficulty of the icon. So that's another thing I think people will use, any design tool for, right? So icons. So the last one isn't Tableau specifically, but I think it's something that people should potentially start doing more. So presentations. I do all of my presentations in Figma. And having used Figma a lot, I'll never go back to PowerPoint. It just feels so clunky. And it feels that way. I would use obviously PowerPoint, if we had like a team presentation and I had to, use that. But a big advantage of Figma is that you have ultimate control of, every single aspect of your slide. So from here, I can click F, I can go down. There's an actual presentation frame size, so you can go 16 by 9. We can call this slide 1. And we'll do 2 slides just for example. So we'll make this slide 2, and it automatically changes to slide 2. So for this, I just want to do the name of this presentation, right? So I can make this Tableau and Figma. I can make that a lot bigger. I can make this extra bold, center it like that, and then I can duplicate that. I can name this like by Robert Janizek, and I'm going to start using auto layout again, just because you'll see why. So let's make this smaller because of visual hierarchy. We'll make that regular. We'll make that 32. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make it auto layout. Again, nothing looks like it looks like it happened, but you'll see here that I now have the options to set constraints and things like that. I can make it row, or I can make it column, and I'm going to make this 32, and I'm going to center it, right? So the good thing is we always know the space between things. The issue I have with PowerPoint, it's difficult to get that information quickly, and you can't do quite things like auto layout and stuff like that. So from here, we can make that like that. And that looks good for slide 1. It seems pretty basic. Slide 2, let's make like a primary background. And this is just an example. We'll make this white. And we will get rid of this. Center this in the middle, and you're probably asking, all right, well, how do I connect these two? How do I make it play that I can go from one thing to the next? Well, you just use the prototype functionality in the top right, and it's basically saying go from here to here. On click, navigate to slide 2, but it doesn't have to be click, it can just be arrow. So you'll notice I can name the flow, so this could be presentation, and most designers use this prototyping functionality for more in-depth prototyping, obviously. So for example, if I created a website, I could do functionality that lets it look and interact exactly like a website. So if I hit presentation, it looks exactly like a presentation. I can go think my thing is freezing. There we go. You can go left and right, back and forth. Pretty basic example, but let me step it up a notch. So if I go back to my dashboard assets, I can take this button, go to presentation, paste this in, and make this a lot bigger. And we're going to use the scale for this example and just make that bigger. We can just name this back to button. Okay, so for this example, I want to, when you click the button, you go to the next slide. Same thing applies, right? You can take this, drag it over to there, and it says on click, go to slide 2. So if we click it, it goes to slide 2. But we can even do one more thing, right? We can add states, right? So what happens when you hover over it? What happens when you click it? On websites and applications, that functionality happens, right? If you go to a nav bar and you hover over it, it changes contrast, right? Because the user needs to understand where their mouse is. So for this example, I'm going to get slightly complicated, but hopefully not too much. I'm going to make this a component, right? And this is a big thing with Figma. I'm going to make this, Zoom is in the way, there we go. Make this a component. You'll notice that it just changed to a component, and I'm going to add properties to it, right? I'm going to add a variant, and I'm going to add 2 variants, right? So there's going to be 3 variants of this button. 1 when it's default, 1 when you hover, and 1 when it's active, right? So we'll name the property as, you could just name it state. This could stay default. This could be hover, and this could be, they usually call it like press. So usually what happens when you have a button that's using primary, it's going to get slightly darker, and then when you press it, it gets even darker. So for this example, we'll change it to something that's a little bit darker, and then the active will be, I don't know, like that, or maybe even one more. So how would you get this into here, right? Because it's 3 different things. What we actually need to do now is add the prototyping ability to these different variants. So if I take it from here to here, what happens instead of on click while hovering, and for this, while we on click, right? So while pressing. So it's saying while hovering, change it to this, while pressing, change it to this. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to look up button, and I'm going to bring the button in, and I'm going to say on click, move to slide 2. So you'll see what happens here. So now you get the functionality, exactly what I talked about. You have on hover, you have on click, and it goes to the next thing, right? And that's just a quick example of something you could do. But I think I showed you kind of a lot of different, perhaps more advanced things, but it kind of shows you, you can really take, if you want to, you know, really go really hard with your presentation, this is a great option for getting more advanced presentations, perhaps. And you can also do animations with it and everything like that. That's kind of all I had. Those are the 5 ways. So prototyping, dashboard assets, you have backgrounds, icons, presentations, and obviously you can use Figma for, I don't know if anyone does sprints for retro boarding. You can do it for quick documentation. You can use it as like your whiteboarding tool. I don't know if anyone has internal whiteboarding tools. We can use it as that as well. So I'll go back to my slide, and this is some of my information. So if you're interested in the UI kit, feel free to visit tableauuikit.com. Follow me on Twitter at Robert Janizek, and that's my email if you have any questions. And it's kind of endless, limitless about the things you can do. So feel free to reach out if you have any ideas, and we could go back and forth. So that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, probably while presenting, you can't see the chat, but there's definitely a healthy combination of, kind of mind-blowedness of, if such a word exists, seeing it in action, as well as some folks sharing, we've started getting into it. We started dabbling into it. Still didn't know it did half of the things, right? So this was valuable for both, kind of like a fresh view and an experience view. And yeah, that's definitely check out the Tableau kit, the Tableau UI kit. See the different assets, right? The different combinations. I forgot what you said, like 1,500 combinations, 15,000 combinations of things that you could go through. There's sounds like a drinking from the fire hose kind of a tool, but definitely one to go check out. Very cool.
Sure. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and actually this this ends like the tug. I'll go ahead and click off the recording part of it. Right, the rest of it kind of approaching the 7 o'clock hours, just networking and and looks like we still have Ashley. I thought Ashley would be at a Cubs game by now, but I think the different presenters are all still here hanging out. So yeah, let me turn off the